How do you create a field trip for a bunch of adults that engages their minds and bodies in the spirit of body awareness? That was our task. This is Nathalie Olson speaking, and Steve, my husband, and I were asked if we would be able to host such a field trip. We thought we could, and we thought we would use the 8 Shields model to design that curriculum. This presentation is going to introduce you to the 8 Shields network model of orienting to the natural cycle, and then we'll present the design overview of our field trip as an example of how you can create curriculum around this 8 Shields model. I first became familiar with this model during my time with the Art of Mentoring, but it's very well laid out in the Coyote's Guide to Connecting with Nature, done by John Young, Ellen Hawes, and Evan McGowan. This book is a fabulous resource for educators wanting to connect people with the natural world. In the book, they outline this particular model of orienting the natural cycle, but they are the first to point out that they are not the creators of this particular model, that in fact traditional cultures around the world, including Chinese people, the Celtic traditions, lots of Native American traditions, that have also been orienting the natural cycle as a way of connecting to the world, as a way of framing their lives for thousands of years. So it's a very old lineage. It is something that humans are naturally drawn to. Our days, our lives are following these cycles. So this particular model is just drawing our attention back to that pattern. So first off, let's get familiar with the patterns of orienting the natural cycle as a way of designing curriculum. In the East, we will begin. The East is a time of new beginnings. So we have the East as the direction, but also the same, if we can overlay the times of day, this would be dawn. The times of year, this would be spring. And the times of the human life cycle, this would be birth. So I'm gonna continue here and demonstrate how we can overlay the directions with the time of day, the time of year, and the human life cycle. In the southeast, time of mid-morning, late spring, and childhood. In the south, time of noon, summer, and adolescence. So you can see those patterns, and I'm sure it seems quite natural, quite normal to have these patterns with each other. They line up very well. I'm going to go back now into the East and add another layer, a layer of some of the feelings associated with these times. So some of the associated feelings of the East could be tenderness, of excited beginnings, and of renewal. So I think if you were to think back to what it's like in that early spring, when things are just starting to bud out, the snow is melting, the new grass shoots are coming up through the brown ground, and everything's very young and tender. Hard frost can be quite damaging, but it's also a time of renewal, of getting things going again. So then, if we were to think about these same patterns in the southeast, the same times, mid-morning, late spring, and childhood, so the baby is now growing up a little bit less fragile, maybe the time that they could be out picking dandelions, as we like to do here in the late spring. It's my niece and nephew, by the way. The feelings could be that of movement, of jump-starting into action and rapid external growth. So very much in the time of late spring, everything is growing very quickly. There's a lot of activity, migration of animals coming back, and just that time of excitement. Often I find a very busy time in my life. After the sleepy, slow time of winter, everyone's ready to get back out and get a lot done. And that also moves into the south. So now it's full on summer, it's high noon, sun is overhead, it's hot, adolescence, time of, we've grown out of our childhood now and we're getting into our own time of hard work and busyness. So yeah, we're hands in the dirt, we're moving about, getting a lot done this time of day. After all of that, maybe we're getting a little tired. In the Southwest, time of siesta, the late dog days of summer, and being a teenager, you know, how teenagers like to sleep. And so now, rather than that external growth, we're moving to the internal growth, the time of the plant has grown up and now maybe the seed can be developing. Also a time of rest after all of that busy work, as my dad is demonstrating so well on the hammock there. In the west, time of sunset, sunsetting in the west as I speak right now. The sunset, the time of autumn and of adulthood. Some of the associated feelings there could be of gathering together, so coming together for dinner after we've gone through our days, returning to be in community or with our families, and sharing of bounty. So again, very much a sense of autumn, the harvest is completed, we can come together and share some zucchinis or something. In the northwest, that time of twilight, sun has gone down, sky is red, late autumn, and the adult has now moved into a role of being a teacher or a leader, could also be a mentor. And this time is of letting go and that of reflection. So as the trees have let go of their leaves, we tend to move inside, possibly a chance to take a little rest from everything that has been happening and turning inward, time for reading books by the fire or journaling. In the north, the sun is directly across the earth from us, so it's midnight. It's the time of winter, the coldest days of the year, and that of elderhood. As we kind of come around the bend of our cycle here, time of dormancy, both for the animals, the plants, and humans included. As we think of the humans that have gone through their life cycle now, that accumulation of experience and a lot of wisdom being held there. And finally, the northeast, which is pre-dawn. For the seasons, it's the time of thaw, and in the human life cycle, it represents death, but it's also that time of conception. So because this cycle is a cycle, it's a circle, there's no beginning, no end, the death and conception go together. It's that time of spark, where a bit of a mystery, very much a connection to spirit and the source of creation. So that's a look at the main directions and some of the cycles that can be combined with that. Now, I spoke to some of the associated feelings that go along with these directions, but I think it's also very important to look at what does it mean for our programs? How do we create activities that can follow these same cycles? So next I'll go through, if we were to synthesize these cycles into 2 words, what would they be? So in the East, excitement and inspiration. So these words apply both to the times of year, of day, of human, but it also can apply to programming. So as we get started, we want excitement and inspiration. Moving into the Southeast, we have orientation and motivation. Summer south, high noon, focus and perspiration, getting that hard, busy work done. Moving into the southwest now, relaxation and internalization. So perhaps a chance to siesta, perhaps a chance to just reflect or internalize. In the west, we have harvest and celebration coming together. In the northwest, reflection and release, just like the leaves of a tree. North, distillation and integration. And in the northeast, the end and the beginning. So those words are what we really can focus our programs around as we develop them. So that is a general look at this design of the 8 Shields network and how we can develop programs around it. Now, it's all good to say these things, and it sounds good. It's quite intuitional to have these systems and cycles with each other. To me, it makes sense, but it's a whole other thing when you actually start to try to create a program around it. So that's what we did as part of the Making Peace with the Land trip. So a little bit on Making Peace with the Land. It's a university course offered by the Augustana campus of University of Alberta here in Camrose. This is the 4th year that the class has been happening under the Spirit of the Land heading. And it's a class as well as a conference series. So part of the class is creating a conference every November. And one of the really beautiful things about the class is that there's community members involved as well. I think this really helps enrich the experience for the students, as well as provide opportunity for community members to come and interact with students, which can certainly be a highlight of the week and continue our lifelong learning. You know, it is such a blessing to have a university in town. However, I know there's a lot of adults that wish that they could do things with it more often, so this is a good opportunity for that. This year, part of the course has been a Rhodes Scholar course. So every other week, the students are outside of the classroom and learning from people who are making peace with the land themselves. So quite a few of the field trips have been to farms. They've gone to see Naomi Klein speak on her book and new movie, This Changes Everything, on climate change. And they'll also be visiting us. So exciting. So they will be visiting our farm Thursday, October 29th from 5 p.m. until 9 p.m. We had a few things to consider being this time of year, particularly around the sun setting at 6 p.m. and it could be very cold. So we've designed the experiences to try to make sure that everyone is still comfortable to be outside, that we're using the sunlight to its maximum capacity, and also that we are staying within the theme of body awareness. So this week's theme is body awareness that had been outlined by the planning committee for the course. So a lot of our activities are all about this being in body awareness. I'm not sure if you've read the book Hope Beneath Our Feet, but there is a reading in there all about our home is also our bodies, and how can we be at peace with the land or feel at home in this place if we're not first at home in our own bodies. So that were some of the considerations that we had. So, getting into our field trip now. We're in the Northeast, we're opening the field trip, so we're welcoming people in. We wanted to get right off the bat starting to inspire them. So how do we bring them into this field trip so that they're excited, that they're brushing off the road dust and ready to have some fun? A lot of the activities that we're doing, if they're not ready for fun, it's going to be a little bit harder. So a few games to play right off the bat for that sense of inspiration. The Eagle Eye, which is a hiding game, and Otter Steals Fish, which is a stalking game. So these are running around type games to make sure that they're warm, as well as just starting to get in touch with their bodies, leaving things behind. For the Southeast, that time of activation, we want to get the participants to come into their body awareness. So we also want to keep them moving and keeping warm, but starting to slowly engage more of our senses. We could do this by some activities using the animal senses walk. So we'll have them in 2 groups. There's about 20 or so participants, and we'll be teaching them a fox walk, which is a very slow, quiet walk through the forest. Then we'll introduce the use of owl eyes using the periphery vision, deer ears to hear even the smallest sounds, raccoon hands in the sense of touch, a very delicate touch, and our dog nose to really get into things and smell them deeply too. Now we've opened up all of our awareness. Hopefully we are using all of the parts of our body for our senses, and now we wanted an activity, a focused activity, which they can try to maintain those senses as well as add a little bit of an exciting part to it, a very focused part. And what we thought for that activity could be feeding chickadees. We have a population of chickadees here on the farm that are quite friendly and hungry, and it's a tricky situation though, especially with a lot of people, because if you're not relaxed, then the chickadee won't be able to come to you. So we need people to stay in that sense of the animal senses, to be relaxed, to have their peripheral vision open, to be listening well, and to be calm. And if all of those things line up, then the chickadee will come and feed from their hand. And, people just become children when that's happening. Excuse me. So it's so fun to have chickadees feeding from your hand like that. So that'll be a bit of an accumulation activity. Now moving into the southwest. So a time to take a break. So we've been outside for about an hour now. Time to come in and have a little bit of rest. So we want to provide the space for casual discussion and relaxation. So as people filter in, they can take off all of their warm clothes and have a little bit of hot chocolate. As we've come in now, time to gather and share. So moving into the west, and it just so happens that it is sunset as well. So now in this time, we'll have dinner as part of the course as well, that in small groups, students prepare a soup dinner. So we'll have that at the house this time around for the field trip. So everyone will be able to come in, have a nice warming soup for dinner and some sharing time. After we've all gathered, had a bit of time to eat, we want to lead some conversation as a chance to reflect on the activity that we've done so far. So a few questions that we can pose are shown here. Some questions such as, how long were you able to be still during Eagle Eye? Was that very difficult to be in one place? Often our bodies start to crave movement. How did it feel to have the senses engaged? Was there one sense that was most difficult to keep engaged? And how was it with the chickadees? So a few conversations that can be had there. Moving into the north now for the integration time. How can we keep these feelings going? What we have started, how do we make it true in ourselves? How do we bring it into our bodies? Not just as a fun activity, but something that we can continue on with. There were 2 activities we had in mind here. One is using yogic breathing. I'm a yoga teacher, so I'll lead a pranayama technique called alternate nostril breathing, which is a very invigorating activity and really heightens the sense of the breath and energy moving through our bodies. I'll also lead people just to be grounding down through their sit bones and really feeling their bodies. Not the best time to be doing this right after dinner, but I think it'll work just fine. And then for dessert, we're going to have a little taste meditation. So using some chocolate-covered raisins to practice mindful eating using all of our senses. I've led this activity before where you hold the chocolate in this case, you smell it, you maybe just touch it to your lips, very, very slowly start to put it into your mouth and notice all of the flavors rather than just eating quickly and gobbling it down as we often do. Often the best piece of chocolate I've ever had is during a taste meditation like that. So we're back in the northeast now. We've gone around one cycle. So it's now time to open and close. Well, close now. So closing this round, starting another, and we're going to be moving back outside. So because of some of the challenges with having that dark time and having that dinner break as a necessity, a kind of landmark for our activities, we decided that we were going to host 2 cycles round in this only a 3-hour time. So you can really change the 8 Shields network to fit your activities however you want. Timing can be very short or very long. So again, into our next cycle now, we've moved back outside. We want to re-inspire. So to do this, we're going to start a bow draw fire. This is an activity using a piece of wood and a bow, like a bow and arrow type of bow. And by using the bow to grind the wood into another piece of wood, you're able to start some dust first of all, but eventually it becomes a coal. By putting the coal into a little bundle of kindle there, as you can see, and then blowing on it, you can actually start fire. So from that burning bundle, we then put that into the fire pit and can start a very beautiful fire. And it really is quite incredible to see a fire started with no match, no flint. Pretty exciting to watch, and people get a real kick out of that. So that will be our inspiring activity. Then we want to get them moving, activate. So bringing them back into their physical awareness, building excitement, we're going to use the blindfold caterpillar activity. This activity I also got from the Coyote Guide, all kinds of activities in there. And for this, we'll have the 20 or so participants broken into 2 groups. Everyone except the leader is blindfolded and holding on to each other's shoulders. They're going to be walking down through the forest as one being. They're acting as if they are one caterpillar. So they're sensing how the person in front of them is reacting to something on the trail. Are they moving from side to side? Are they speeding up or slowing down? And trying to think as one. A pretty neat activity for a group of adults. Plus it's dark anyways, so blindfold, it's a good time to be using blindfolded activities. It also helps heighten the other senses. So into the south then, our focus activity, which I like to think of as a bit of an accumulation activity, kind of a peak, is the activity of blindfolded drumstock. So we've walked our 2 caterpillars down to the north end of the woods. We'll break them up onto 2 separate trails, and keeping their blindfolds on, they'll start to hear a drum. Boom, 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 boom. And they'll have to make their way through the forest, not holding on as a caterpillar anymore, but as individuals, up and through the forest to find the drum. So the drum is going to be at the fire that we started. The forest is probably 500 meters or so of a walk to get to the edge of the forest, and then a bit of yard area to pass through to get around the barn and to find the forest there. So I've participated in this activity many times before. It is very exciting. It's difficult, but it is so, you feel so alive. It's such a challenge. And of course we'll have lots of unblindfolded supervisors around to make sure that people are safe as well. So that's the time of focus. Now moving into the southwest, time to take a break. They've completed the blindfolded drumstock, they're back at the fire. Take a time, relax. Maybe if you're thirsty and you use the washroom, good chance to do that before we come back together and gather and share. So now we've moved back into the west. Everyone's back at the fire now. We'll have a bit of time to practice some skills. some bow drill fire. We also have a nature museum set out in the barn so people can look there, share some stories, and talk around the fire. So past to the peak activities now more of a time in the northern hemisphere. In that time of discussion, we'll first take a chance to reflect, so sharing some stories around the fire. We'll ask a few questions such as, how did it feel to have your eyes covered? Was it hard to trust others leading you when you were doing the drum stock? Did you lose your sense of direction? How did your other senses come into play with your eyes covered? And other questions as they come up. So sharing this activity so that we're reflecting on it. A very important step that's sometimes overlooked is that time of reflection and of integration. Actually, you really need both, otherwise it's just a one-off and maybe you haven't taken it in, learned it as well. So for the integration, we're going to send them home with a little bit of homework, and that is to use the fox walk and the other animal sensory activities that we've practiced here on the farm. So part of this Making Peace with the Land class is to have a sit spot. So a sit spot is just a place you go out to in nature and sit and do nothing else. You're just paying attention to what's around you. Often when we walk out into the forest, we're really quite disruptive, and the birds are scared, animals move away. But if we go into our sit spot with our animal senses engaged, we can often make a lot less commotion, and the birds and other animals will return to what we call baseline very quickly. So that's the homework, to go out, practice their fox walk, and notice if it feels different to do that. So now we've come to the end. So back into the northeast, we wanted to have a goodbye, a closing. So we're still around the fire. Perhaps share a little bit of gratitude if anyone has that feeling that they want to share. And then just closing with any words from the organizers to prepare for the following week. And so that is the field trip as we've planned it. I hope this presentation has given you a good overview of the 8 Shields model and how it may be applied in designing your own curriculum or learning design for an educational program. All credit is given to the teachers before me who have laid out this model, and I'd like to give thanks to the Art of Mentoring program that introduced me to this model, the Coyote's Guide, who has laid it out so well, and my course, Learning Theory and Program Design, who encouraged me to make this video. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope if you have any comments or anything that you can post them underneath where the video is, and I'd love to continue with the conversation with you there. Thank you.